Hello, hello. Welcome back to People Junkie, a podcast about people and their stories, as everyone has one. And maybe you could connect to someone you never thought you would. If you've been following the podcast, we so appreciate it. And if you're new, thanks for joining. Today's word of the day is carny, a person who works in a carnival or amusement show. And my guest today is an amusement show all her own. She's one of the world's rare female sword swallowers. Yes, you heard right, sword swallower. In 2014, she joined the renowned sideshow company, The Freak Show Deluxe, where she's performed all across the nation and is now president of their Los Angeles chapter. She is also a burlesque dancer with the Dollface Dames, an LA burlesque company, and is part of the Jade Follies, an all-Asian only burlesque and variety show. You may have seen her perform on BuzzFeed, Investigation Discovery's True Nightmares, and on CBS's The Late Late Show with James Corden. Without further ado, I bring you Krystal Kurio. All right, Krystal, thank you so much for being on People Junkie. How's it feeling today?
All right. How about you?
I'm so well. I'm so happy to have you on. I have a word of the day, and I hope this doesn't offend you, but the word of the day was carny, someone who works in amusement shows. And I feel like you are an amusement show all your own. Talk a little bit about yourself and how did you get interested in knife swallowing or sword swallowing, that is?
So I have always been a performer. I started dancing when I was 4 years old, acting when I was maybe 11. And there was just kind of this natural progression of acquiring various talents. In college, I studied dance and drama with a double major. And in the theater world, I kept getting pigeonholed in dramatic roles. So I decided, let's take a clown class to figure out how I'm funny. Then I absolutely fell in love with clowning. Straight out of college, joined a clown troupe. And these people encouraged me to find eccentric talents.
Okay.
One was playing the singing saw, but the other I acquired actually from a clown class that I took up here in Los Angeles with Studio Zani. It was a Commedia dell'arte workshop. And I found out along the way that one of the other students in the class with me was a sword swallower.
Wow.
Now, when you think of sideshow, it feels like this kind of distant thing. You have a vague idea of what it is and the kind of people who perform in it, but it also feels a little fantastical and otherworldly. Like you can't really touch it.
Yeah, almost like ethereal, like, right?
Exactly. Yeah. You don't really think about it existing in the modern world. So once I actually knew somebody who did this thing, it like kind of blew up in a new part of my brain. And I couldn't stop thinking about it. So after the class was over, I reached out to him and like, hey, I don't know if you remember me from class, but I'm actually really interested in sword swallowing. Is there any way you'd be willing to teach me?
Wow.
Yeah, he was like, well, yes, we could do that. But I have to ask, why do you want to do this? Because it isn't a magic trick. It is actually incredibly dangerous. And I don't really remember what I said, but apparently it was good enough. So his name is Vincent Wolf, my mentor. He took me on and taught me the ways.
Wow. I mean, how does one get started doing that?
Well, actually, I can show you.
Oh my gosh. So for those of you listening on Spotify and other outlets, this is actually truly amazing what you're going to see right now. Krystal Kurio is actually going to show us right now on how one gets started sword swallowing. So she has, if you could describe what you're holding up right now.
Yeah, what I have in my hands right now is a wire hanger.
How many inches is that? How many inches is that?
I've never measured it, but
It looks
I
like a
can tell
foot.
you, it's more than a foot.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely. Maybe a foot and a half.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, it basically, when I swallow this, the tip ends up in the middle of my chest.
Oh, good Lord.
That probably makes no sense to anyone just listening right now. So, what I've done to the wire hanger is, it's not just how it would be hanging in your closet.
Hmm.
If you imagine the triangular part, basically what I've done is taken it from the center and pulled it straight down so that it's a very long U shape, similar to a sword.
Yeah, it looks like a medieval sword right now,
Yeah,
or the shape of
but
it.
there's like this negative space in the middle, which is why a lot of people actually don't love to train this way.
Hmm.
Um, Personally, I think it helps you become a better sword swallower, because if you're swallowing something that is that has no negative space, um, you can just like move what, I'm not sure what this is technically called. In men, it would be like your Adam's apple.
Oh,
Um,
okay. But it's down your esophagus, right? It's going
yeah,
down.
yeah,
Hmm.
yes, but it has to move past that little bump, right?
Oh,
That
wow.
cartilage. So you actually have to move that out of the way in order for anything to pass by it.
Hmm.
You use a wire hanger if you're lazy.
Please don't be lazy. And by the way, Krystal Kurio is a professional. So please do not attempt this at home. Please do not do so. Again, she is a professional and she's been doing this for many, many years. Okay, so we got that out of the way.
Yeah. If this is something you really have an interest in, find a mentor, find someone to help you do it safely.
Hmm.
But yeah, so if you're using something that does have negative space in the middle, like a wire hanger, and you let that piece of your anatomy relax
Hmm.
and then pull it back up, it actually catches, and that hurts.
Well,
Um,
yeah, I
yeah,
would think so.
so I feel like training with this is a good way to make sure that you don't get lazy and you do keep it out of the way the entire time, regardless of what you're swallowing.
Oh my gosh. So, how far can you go on video right
Oh, you
now?
just went mute.
Oh, okay. Give me 1 second.
Oh, I heard that.
All right. So, how far can you show us today how you can go? And again, if you're not comfortable with it, you don't have to do that.
Yeah, this I can do really easily. And
Okay.
actually, I'll give the people who are watching a little something that you can describe to everybody who's not. Um,
Yeah.
so, like I said before, this is going to end up pretty much in the center of my chest. For context, that means it has to travel past the gag reflex at the back of your throat.
Hmm.
It's going to go through my pharynx, and at the bottom of the pharynx, there's a sphincter that, for a lot of people, when you're training, is pretty hard to train yourself to get by. So it's going to
Okay.
go through that sphincter and end up in my esophagus.
All right. So, for those of you who are listening right now, she's actually licking the sides and she, oh my gosh, that was wow. That was so super fast. She's smiling. She has it all the way down and she's pulling it out right now. Oh my gosh. Krystal, I so appreciate you showing individuals how you swallow a sword or how you prepare to swallow a sword. I mean, this is something that a lot of people don't get to see. So I'm so appreciative and I'm sure those who are watching are amazingly appreciative of what you just did. How did you first start to do that? Because I mean, looking at it, it looks super daunting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So basically, what you do is you swallow a lot, or you try to. Obviously, it doesn't happen right away.
Mm-hmm.
The regimen that I was given was basically 7 times a day. You step away from your life and you swallow, but not just one. You try to swallow 3 times. So it's 21 times a day,
Wow.
every day of the week, no break days. Um, and you have to be a certain kind of human to be that determined.
I think that
really
that is a superhuman trait, what you're talking about right now.
Basically.
Do you ever get scared? Does it ever scare you?
No, I mean, sometimes when I have a new sword or new instrument of some sort that I am about to swallow that I've never swallowed before, that I can get maybe, I don't want to say scared, sometimes a little anxious, maybe.
Maybe intimidated?
Yeah, but mostly excited.
I mean, I'm laughing because I don't even know what to say what I just saw. It was I've known, well, we met years ago through my friend Brian. And when I think I first met you, you dressed up as a clown. And I'm gonna show that picture. It'll be definitely edited in. And it was so amazing because you were in total character. You were like a mime clown. And it was the most amazing thing. And then when he's like, oh yeah, she's amazing. She does, she sword swallows. I'm like, what? Because I've only seen males do that. And you're one of the rare women in the world to do it. So how does that help you when you're on the freak show circuit?
Well, it's commercially attractive and desirable, right? To have a pretty woman who does this dangerous stunt.
Well, you're a beautiful woman. Let's just say that you're beautiful naturally, and then you put on makeup and yeah, you got to say that's a good combination, right?
Yeah, because I did start out exclusively doing sideshow as my clown Winnie. But there was a point at which people were asking, like, do you do this outside of clown? And I realized there's this whole market that would be very potentially lucrative. So I developed kind of a different stage presence persona as Krystal Kurio, and it definitely has been. There's, especially for me, because I don't just look like a pretty girl. I look innocent. I have kind of a little bit of a baby face.
Yeah,
so
that
the
you do.
juxtaposition is really interesting to people.
Definitely.
and I like to play on that. Whether I am Winnie and it's more something that's unassuming and innocent, or whether I'm Krystal and like in a burlesque show, then I like to show that just because there is a strong feminine presence doesn't mean that there is an inherent weakness.
Absolutely. I mean, you also, like you said, are a burlesque dancer, and you are you dance with the Dollface Dames, and then also the Jade Follies, which is an all Asian only burlesque show and variety show. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So as I said before, I grew up dancing, and I think it was maybe 4 years ago or so. My roommate at the time was the dance captain of the Dollface Dames, and she introduced me to the owner of the company, Lola Boutte. And she was like, "You're a sword swallower. I hire variety artists. I want you to work for me." So I just kind of slyly sent her my dance reel as well. And she's like, "Would you like to dance?" And that's kind of how it got started, because I'd also been thinking about becoming a burlesque performer for a while. But I just, again, it's that thing of like, how do I get into this? Sometimes you don't quite know how to start. But because the Dollface Dames is more of a cabaret style burlesque company, they group dances and stage shows. So it was something that was already somewhat familiar to me. Like, I can do choreography. I can perform the hell out of all of that. So I just kind of like, I started with the group dances and learned the basics kind of by physically learning and embodying along the way. And then I started developing solos. Then after a while, because most of my sideshow acts at this point are spoken. They're Krystal Kurio. I talk my audience through. And so at about the same time, Lola and I were kind of like, hey, maybe you should host shows. So she started giving me spots as a burlesque MC.
Mm-hmm.
And after, I think, 2 years or so, she referred me to her burlesque name is Me So Pretty. She is the producer of the Jade Follies, which is the all Asian burlesque and variety of review. And ever since, I have been the host of that amazing show. We actually just celebrated, I guess technically it was our 1-year anniversary, but it was 2 years after our first show because of that whole COVID thing.
Wow. Yeah. How did COVID affect you? I'm sure it did because it stopped a lot of live shows from happening. Did you pivot to online shows?
Yes. It was very difficult because, I mean, first of all, it's really difficult when you've worked so hard to create this career where, you know, because I don't have a support job. I don't have anything other than my performing career. And so when in the span of like 2 weeks, all of your gigs just disappear and you have no idea when they're coming back.
Wow.
I honestly had an identity crisis.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of artists, they don't, you know, we don't have a fallback.
Yeah. And it's like, it serves as so many different parts of your life. It's not just my career, it's my social life. This is how I eat and spend time with my friends.
Yeah.
You know, it's my fun, it's my exercise. Like it served so many roles to me that I wasn't even aware of. So once that all went away, it was kind of like, I don't know, I guess getting out of a codependent relationship, like, okay, how do I do all this for myself without that thing now? But at some point you do have to, because it's my art, it's my passion. It's not just the way that I make money. You do have to sit down and be like, all right, in this new world, how does this happen? Yeah. So a lot of people started developing online shows. It was a rocky road of trial and error.
I'm sure.
But it was really interesting to me because I'm also an actor. I do not only stage acting, but film acting. So it gave me kind of an opportunity to mix my burlesque and sideshow kind of like variety talent with my film experience. Yeah. And gave me the opportunity to tell stories in a different way. So even though it is a lot of time and energy, it was very rewarding. And the coolest thing now is like I can go back and watch those stories over and over again.
Yeah, they're recorded, right? And they're there. I guess it's posterity now, right?
A little bit, yeah. Yeah. So I think the virtual shows, they opened a lot of people's eyes up to certain things. Like there are performers who have disabilities that make it so that they cannot perform in live shows. Oh, wow. I didn't know that. Yeah. So, and I'm sure to a certain extent, depending on the specific situation, the same as, it goes for audience members as well. So COVID kind of gave us a reason, and not that we really should need more of a reason, but gave everybody else a reason to pivot into something that is more accessible to everybody. And it allowed producers and performers who haven't been on a live stage in years to finally do something again from, the comfort and safety of their own homes. So I hope that virtual shows won't disappear entirely. Yeah. They have already dwindled a lot. The last show that I did was about a month ago. And like the tips, I think, were probably 50% of what they would usually be, if not more.
Wow. Do you think it's because people just want out and they're spending their money outside of the virtual world?
Can you repeat that again? You cut out a little.
Do you feel that it's because people are just wanting to go outside and they're spending their money outside as opposed to in the virtual world?
Absolutely. Now that things are kind of opening up again, there's more opportunity and just ability to be physically other places again. For normal able-bodied people, there isn't as much of a reason, I guess, to continue watching virtual shows, which I think is a shame because especially the ones that most of them, they air live and then are recorded so that they can be watched afterward. So I think it kind of gives a cool opportunity to watch on your own time. Especially, I can't tell you how many times myself as a performer with other performer friends, if we're not booked at the same show and I want to watch a friend perform, I would love to see that. Even if I couldn't be there physically, I would love to be like, hey, let me give you this much money, give me a recording, and then I can come and watch my friends. But maybe we'll see a little bit more of that. I hope.
Yeah, it's something that you guys are definitely going to have to push, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, your career choices aren't something coming from an Asian background that would be the norm. How did your parents feel when you told them, hey, you know what? I think I'm going to be a sword swallower. And also, bonus, I'm going to be a burlesque dancer.
Well, I am extremely lucky. My mom is incredibly supportive. And when I was younger, she was a little bit more skeptical of my ability to make it as a performer. I remember we had so many conversations where, she would be supportive. She would be like, I'm so proud of you for everything you're doing, but you should have a fallback plan. And she pushed that so much. I was like, okay. And this was in first grade. The next person to come in for career day or whatever was a dentist. And I was like, I'm going to be a dentist. So for the longest time, that was the thing. And I don't know necessarily why I chose that or why it lasted so long. Cause I think that lasted through like junior high.
Wow. That's a long time.
Yeah. And I think it's just because, again, just the repetition of like, you need a fallback plan and okay, this is what I chose. But there was one pivotal moment where I was in junior high and I was I think it was my 8th grade year, my final year in junior high, I was in the advanced acting class and we did a play and I was the female lead. And I remember my mom coming up to me, just beaming afterward and being like, that was amazing. I could barely recognize you up there. I was just watching you thinking, that's not my daughter. And
that's actually a high compliment because that's what you want as an actor, right? Where people don't see who you are, but they see the character that you're portraying.
Yeah. And never once after that did she talk about a fallback plan. So
that is awesome.
Since then, pretty much anything that I say, she's just like, I know you can do it. My dad, we have a little bit different of a relationship. My parents have been divorced pretty much my entire life. And he is much more conservative. So he knows about the clowning, he knows about the sword swallowing. Again, he's very supportive. He doesn't understand it, but he's kind of just like, as long as you're happy and healthy, I'm happy for you. But he's also very Christian, so he doesn't know about the burlesque.
Oh, oops. I'm sure he won't hear People Junkie for a while because we'll definitely blow up sometimes.
He's a mountain law. So.
There you go. Now, in your introduction, I talked about how you've been profiled on BuzzFeed and also Discovery's True Nightmares, and even on the Late Late Show with James Corden. Talk a
Mhm.
little bit about that. I mean, especially in the Late Late Show, you're in front of possibly millions of viewers. Do you ever get nervous?
Sometimes it's not a bad nervous though. It's an excited nervous.
Mm-hmm.
I think the most negative thing that comes out of that nervousness is just this anxiety about not being good enough,
Mm-hmm.
which I think most good performers
Mm-hmm.
deal with. And it's definitely scary because when you are performing something that you have created, all of it is you, and it puts you in a very vulnerable space. And so, putting yourself out there, putting your heart out there for everybody to see and everybody to either praise or criticize, it is a scary thing. But luckily, for the most part, I get very good responses.
Good. Good.
Yeah, there are moments like my first live performance after COVID, or I don't want to say after COVID because we're still kind of in it.
Yeah.
But maybe like after vaccines.
There you go. There you go.
I was really nervous because I was like, I've done this for television since then, but I haven't done this for a live audience, and it's a very different thing. So I was scared that I'd lost it. I hadn't been able to flex that muscle. So how possibly atrophied is this act going to be?
But weren't you practicing, especially with the sword swallowing, like you said, every day, right? At least 3 times a day?
Well, that's when you're first training.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, 7 times a day, 3 times every time. But once you've kind of gotten it, you don't have to do it every day.
Okay. Okay. Thanks for clarifying. But go on.
But yeah, so and also even beyond just the stunt itself,
Mm-hmm.
how well can I hold an audience's attention
True.
after not being in large groups of people for so
Mm-hmm.
long? So I was a little nervous about that, but luckily there was this photographer who got amazing reaction shots. There was a shot of me as I was about to swallow a sword, and you see the audience just kind of, anticipating. And then he got a shot right after I swallowed it. And there's just like this massive movement where everybody's like from kind of leaning forward to blown back and just jaws on the floor. It was really cool to be able to see that moment captured so beautifully and so perfectly. And it gave me some validation of like, okay, you still got it. You're good.
You pat yourself on the back, huh? You still got it. How does social media help with you getting back in the thick of things and for people to get to know who you are?
It helps a lot. Especially about a year ago, I was able to film the Go Big show, which aired last January, and it just popped up on HBO Max. So it'll kind of like go through waves of people finding me now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's great because, people are seeing me and like, even if it's just, hey, I really enjoyed your performance. I thought you should have made it to the finals. Again, that's more validation. And then obviously there's the whole, and I kind of hate that this is how Instagram functions now for so many performers, but it's basically the way that you advertise your business now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 100%.
People don't really want they generally don't ask for your business card anymore. They ask for your Instagram handle.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's a blessing and it's a curse because it does give people kind of like an easy way to see who you are, what you do, kind of like your brand. And I say
Yeah,
that with a roll.
it's like an ongoing reel. And for those who don't know what a reel is basically a video resume that you send out if you want to be actor or producer or, all that good stuff. So yeah, and it's constantly moving, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the problem with things like social media is like you have to be so active.
Oh
And it's
gosh.
kind of turned us into our own publicists, which is a
Mm-hmm.
completely different job. And it is a
Mm-hmm.
completely different full-time job. So
100%.
it's like all these layers of jobs upon jobs, and it's exhausting. Exhausting.
Well, one thing is that what really bothers me is you don't even have to be talented anymore. They just look at how many followers you have. And before, when actors would go on these auditions, they would just look at your physical resume, right? That you would
Mhm.
hand them and you would do your thing. But now it's just like, oh, well, let me see your social media and how many followers. How do you feel about that? And how do you get past that?
I hate that. It was really interesting, though, being part of the generation that knew both sides. And it's similar because maybe people at home don't know what it feels like to be an actor, but it's kind of similar to how it is being the generation that like knows analog and digital,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And there it was really disheartening because I work with a dance company, and for a while I was helping with auditions. So I would be on the backside of casting networks, looking through people's submissions.
Mm-hmm.
And Instagram followers were never anything that the company cared about.
Mm-hmm.
Never anything that like was stated, like tell us how many followers you have. We need
Mm-hmm.
to know. But it was something that dancers were automatically submitting in the note section. And it's like,
Wow.
why do I care? Why
Mm-hmm.
do I care? I care about your talent. I want to see what you can do. So there's a certain amount of, I guess, integrity that feels like it's being lost. Um, I don't think this is anything necessarily new.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same reason why people like to advertise products with celebrities rather than people who actually use them.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it's, very similar to the nepotism that's existed in Hollywood forever. Uh,
Absolutely. Absolutely. I
and I
mean,
feel like it's just part of the machine, especially, and I have opinions. So, and
and that's why I want you on here,
yeah,
because you have something to say. You have definitely a unique story.
I feel like it is very much a product of capitalism.
Oh,
Um, you know,
100%. Mm-hmm.
it's like how do I produce more? How
Mm-hmm.
do I get more out of less?
Yeah.
And yeah, and so I feel like while the tools of social media are, they have a lot of potential for being extremely helpful.
Mm-hmm.
They also are kind of just grinding everybody down because it's basically, like we were saying before, you become your own publicist. It's not paid work.
Mm-mm.
You might get paid for the gig you book off of it, but normally a publicist would get like a separate fee,
Mm-hmm.
right, for
Yeah.
doing that job. But you don't get it. You got to grind, and it's so unhealthy.
Oh my gosh, we're going to pause right there. For people who are just joining us, we thank you. We have an amazing guest. Her name is Krystal Kurio, and she is one of very few in the world female sword swallowers. She's also part of a few burlesque companies. And we're having a really good conversation as to how social media right now can help hurt or hinder you, because she's also an actor. And if you missed the first half, go back and rewind or go back to the beginning of the timeline, and you will see that she actually did a little example of how to get started as a sword swallower. So we really appreciate you, Krystal, coming on and giving us your feedback and learning more about the world of freak shows and variety shows. Now, getting back to things, one thing I did want to ask you, which is, I feel really relevant, the Me Too, right? So you're a burlesque dancer, and a lot of people I feel have misconceptions of what a burlesque dancer is. Mm-hmm. And then coupled with how maybe people look at you, especially men, how does it make you feel being a burlesque dancer and a sword swallower in the Me Too movement, or during the time of the Me Too movement?
Right. I think that, well, for me, burlesque and sideshow, these are all ways of me claiming and reclaiming my body for myself. They are things that empower me and remind me of the power that I have when I forget. You know, in sideshow, these are stunts that the human body was not created to do, but the human body has the ability to do it. Mm-hmm. And in burlesque, this is also true of sideshow, but more specific to burlesque, I have entire control over what you see, mm-hmm. when you see it, mm-hmm. and how you see it. And for me, that control is so important. I mm-hmm. think anyone pretty much who's not a cis man has those experiences of not having control of what people see you as. Mm-hmm. And I feel like burlesque gives you the opportunity to take that back. So I feel like the heart of burlesque and the heart of like the true Me Too mm-hmm. are really part of the same spirit.
In what sense?
So Me Too is a way that women who had been disempowered in a specific way mm-hmm. through sexual harassment or sexual assault, it was for them to reclaim their voices, reclaim their stories, and make them known. Mm-hmm. And it just in a different way, burlesque gives you the same opportunity. These are both things that empower women and help them be heard.
Yeah, I think that's definitely an interesting take, because some people are just like, oh, you're just showing your body and you just want men's attention and things. That's like you're asking for it. But what you're saying makes a lot of sense, because you know what you're doing with your body. You have that control. The audience isn't on top of you. You're literally controlling the audience, right? So that's a type of power that most women, I've been sexually harassed, man, especially when I got into sports, entertainment is what it's called now. And I went into writing as a sports writer, so people wouldn't see what I look like, so that they would treat me differently. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It's an interesting thing. But getting back to you, talk a little bit about being in a freak show. What is it like? How are you treated? What is the day-to-day? Is it the same thing, or is it something different? Go ahead and talk a bit more about that.
It is always very different. There are a lot of different ways to participate in a freak show. There is the traditional kind of grind show, where basically there's a tent, a bunch of performers, and each performer has their spot, but the show top to bottom is like maybe 30 minutes. And so once you see the same act that you walked in on, you've seen the whole show, but it doesn't really stop. It just keeps grinding. That is the kind of show I have never been a part of. And I'm okay with that. I think it would be a healthy experience for me, and I'm not saying that I'm above it. but I don't know, I'm not necessarily at a point in my life where I feel like I need to do that. Maybe I will be at some point. Who knows? The company that I work with, I really enjoy. Their name is Freak Show Deluxe. They are largely performers who have theatrical training. And I'm not saying that this is something that is necessary to be a good performer or a good sideshow performer, but because I also have that background, I just think like we work very well together. This is something that makes sense to me. We understand each other. Place in this weird little world. So they also have a really interesting approach to kind of adapting sideshow for the modern world, while also kind of keeping things relatively classic. And it's because of that theatrical approach, you know. So we do a lot of different things. We book private parties, we book amusement parks, we book haunts. It is all over the place, film, television. So it's just kind of whatever comes our way. I think also we've done historical events. But and strip clubs. I forgot about that.
Can't forget that.
Think about it, but they book headliners often, and you know, usually it'll be a headlining stripper, but sometimes they'll hire us. So it's a really interesting kind of approach, you know, a modern approach to how, I guess, to evolve along with the times, you know, because it's not going to pay the bills to keep sideshows in like carnivals. For some people it is, but there just aren't enough carnivals for everybody, you know?
Yeah. And that was my next question, leads into my next question. Is it a lucrative business?
I mean, you're not going to be rich by any but it is possible to live comfortably. It just depends. One of the big problems that has been coming up for a long time, this is not new, but especially now after COVID, there are so many people who are just compromising. People who have just never really stood for their worth, is the rates are entirely dependent on the community. You know, there isn't like some magical list of like, oh, you're a sword swallower. This is how much sword swallowers make, so let me pay you this much. It's market value. And we are all gig workers.
Yeah.
And there is no union.
But why isn't there a price? Because I mean, I would think sword swallowing would be above maybe someone who was a fire dancer or something like that. Like, is there a pecking order?
I wouldn't necessarily say a pecking order. There, like you're saying, there definitely are acts that can and should be paid more.
Yeah.
But the problem is just that so many times the clients are, you know, and again, it's that thing like, how much can I get for as little as possible?
Ain't that the truth? And it seems like the richer you are, the less you're willing to pay, which to me makes no sense. But then again, I guess if you're a miser, then, you know, you keep that money and that's how you get more rich, right?
Yep. So
I wish you could see Krystal's face if you're watching on, or if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts.
Very expressively. Yeah, it's really tough. And the thing is, there are some of us who are willing to communicate and be like, hey, how much are you quoting for stuff like this? So there are a few people in my life where we are all on the same page and we are all willing to back each other up. But there aren't enough people out there like that. Some people, they just don't know. God bless them. They are new and they just haven't learned yet. And that's okay. As long as you do learn eventually. The people that I can't stand are the people who are like, yeah, I can bring you like 5 performers for like a couple $100. Like, no, everybody needs to be making way like that much that you're about to ask for the entire group.
Absolutely. Especially because you said it's gig work, which means it's not consistent.
Exactly. So that's where the biggest problem lies, I think, monetarily, is that there are always going to be people undercutting you. Again, sometimes they're just new people who don't know any better and accidentally are undercutting you. I have forgiveness for that. Or maybe not forgiveness, but I'll say grace. I think grace is a better word. But I mean, okay, so I am a socialist. So at the core of me is a desire to do what's best for everybody.
I feel you on that.
Yeah, inherently, I care about people. I care about the people I work with. I care about my industry. And I want us all to be able to make living rates. You don't have to get traditional wages, but, rates.
Whatever happened to do what you love and the money will come, right? But what you're saying, I mean, it's everywhere. It's everywhere, but especially in an industry like yours, where it's not really a big industry and you have to make do with the gigs that you can get, which is a bit unfortunate. With that said, I mean, do you feel that there's a lot of judgment with people that work in quote unquote freak shows or are considered carnies or things of that sort, burlesque dancers, sword swallowers?
Judgment with regards to what?
Where they're like, oh, that's what you do? Why do you do that?
Oh yeah, definitely.
You're smarter than that. I mean, you're an actor, right? You can just go towards one way as opposed to having to keep doing all of these things.
Absolutely. And I remember my first year working with Freak Show Deluxe. At the end of a show, we do what's called a blow off. And it's kind of like the last thing, usually interactive with the audience. And this particular show, or actually it happened multiple times, but it was always with this one particular blow off called the Human Staple Board, where my fellow performer, the manager on that tour, and our sergeant at arms at Freak Show Deluxe, Alice, Malice Aforethought is her stage name. Basically, you would come up with paper money and staple it to her in various parts of her body, depending on how much it was.
Wow.
And people would come by and be like, I don't know, say weird things like, I can get you a job somewhere else so you don't have to do this, something along those lines. And it's like, dude, she graduated valedictorian from her university, okay? Doesn't need charity. She chose to do this. And she would tell people that, which I thought was amazing. And when I get the same thing, I'm like, I have 2 degrees. I choose this. I choose this.
And isn't it funny? Sorry to interrupt you. Isn't it funny that it's coming from the people who are paying you guys to do what you're doing? They're paying to see you guys do what you do.
Yep, it is. It's ironic for sure. But yeah, and it's funny though, because like if people have specifically used the example of like, why do you do this when you're an actor? It's like, you would be saying the same thing to me if I were an actor though. Like you would find a way to delegitimize that work too. And I think we saw there was a little bit more awareness brought to the the issue throughout COVID, because all of a sudden the outside world shut down and everybody was just like consuming art left and right, watching Netflix, watching, whatever, reading things, listening to podcasts. And everyone, all the artists anyway, were like, hey, do you see what we're doing for you? Do you see our value now? That it's all you can do? So maybe you should remember that. And I feel like people have been very quick to forget, unfortunately. But I think that's just, the struggle of the artist. People are going to tell you that what you're doing isn't worth it. But
no,
if you're an artist, you have no choice.
Exactly. As an artist, you have no choice. I mean, right. I lost my corporate job last year due to COVID. And I got to say, thank God for that, because when you have to separate 8 hours of your life doing something you don't want to do, it's taken away from your creativity, right?
Yep.
And that is definitely priceless. And I want people to get to know you more. I want people to reach out to you. So I want you right now to give all your social media handles. And if you could actually spell them out as well, as people are also listening to the podcast.
Yeah, of course. So I guess we'll start with Instagram. We've been talking about that one a lot. It's the same as my Twitter as well. It's at Krystal_Kurio, KRYSTAL_KURIO. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Krystal Kurio, just how I spelt it without the underscore. I think that's all I'm at. Oh, my website, you can go check out my fancy website that I made myself, another joyful job that I had as a kid worker. Thank you, Wix, for making my life a little easier. www.krystalkurio.com.
Awesome. I thank you so much for the time that you've given People Junkie. One of the reasons why I started this podcast is because so many people have stories and you never know how you're going to connect with them, right? Yep. And this is the vessel that I use. So I really appreciate you not only coming on and talking about all these things, but you also showed us how you swallow a sword, which my stomach's still turning a little bit, but but I so appreciate you. One more question.
Yeah.
I'm going to start asking this question of my guests because I really think that it's important. I did earlier today I had an amazing guy on called Gustavo Arellano. And if you ever get a chance, he was editor-in-chief of the Orange County, the OC Weekly. I don't know if you remember that. And he had a column called Ask a Mexican. And when you hear the podcast, you'll get to know him a bit more. But the reason why I've talked about him, because I asked him, what does the future hold for him? And I'm going to ask you the same question. What does the future hold for Krystal Kurio?
I don't know. And I think that is a beautiful thing, as scary as it can be. And this is kind of how I've always lived my life. I think I got this from my mom. I just try to be open and say yes to what I feel serves me and serves the world. So that has somehow gotten me this far. It's gotten me to the point of being a full-time performer with no survival job. And that's really all I want. I just want to create art, live relatively comfortably off of it, and, help people feel things. And there's a certain kind of activism that's, I think, embedded in that. I've been feeling much more pulled toward that activism. So I feel like if anything is going to change, that is going to be the direction it'll change with. But again, short answer, I don't know.
Well, my hope for you is that you grow and grow not only as a person, but your variety shows and whatever you do. And I hear you on that. I feel like all of us need to be activists at some point in time because we all need one another, right?
Yes,
Well, thank you.
absolutely.
Thank you so much. You're such an awesome guest and such a beautiful person. And when I get a chance, I'm definitely going to see you at one of your shows. Do you put the shows on as well, like the dates and times that you're going to be somewhere on your social media?
Yes, I try to be good about listing those on my Instagram. I have a little link in my link or in my bio that'll take you to my link tree,
Mhm.
where I usually have links to all the places you can buy tickets.
Perfect. Well, I'll be checking in on your link tree. Well, thank you so much, Krystal. You have a beautiful day and we'll chat soon, right?
Yeah, thank you
I,
so much for having me, and thank you for doing what you do.
oh, thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
You too.
Adios.
Bye.
Well, we were speaking with Krystal Kurio. She is one of very few sword swallowing females in the world. And she's also a burlesque dancer, as well as an actor, and talked about possibly becoming more of a social activist. So we're definitely going to hear more from her. Once again, thanks for joining People Junkie. We so appreciate you joining us. Make sure to check us out on all our social media platforms. Remember to like and share. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. That's going to tell you when the next People Junkie podcast will be dropping. And if you're on the go, no worries, we got you. We're also on Spotify and soon Apple Podcasts. And remember, wherever you go or whatever you do, put a smile on your face. You never know whose day you'll make. Ciao for now.